going on there, ladies and gentlemen, beasts and fellow monsters? Monster Man Vapes coming back to you with another review, and the product I'm going to be reviewing in this video is the SMOK or SMOK, however you prefer to call it, TFV16. Now, a little bit of a rundown for you. The TFV16 is their newest tank on the market. It uses mesh coils, and it kind of took an idea from the Aspire Cleto tank, where that tank had the coil as the chimney as well, where it's all one piece. So this tank is also the same way. You get a single mesh and a dual mesh coil in the packaging. You also can get a triple, but that's more like sort of aftermarket, you know, you gotta get that separately. So why don't we dive down to the table, take a closer look at it. Let me show you all that's included in the packaging, show you the tank up close, you know the whole deal. So let's go down to the table. So this is the packaging that the SMOK or SMOK, however you prefer to call it again, TFV16 tank will come packaged. As you can see, the company name up here at the top. You get a picture of the tank itself. TFV16 tank, Return of the King. Down here at the bottom, you get your color option. This one is stainless steel. On this side, it says TFV16 tank again. King Cloud, King Flavor, King Capacity, King Airflow, King Pleasure. Well, we'll find out if it meets that standard here in a moment. On this side, you have your QR code, scratch off, authenticity, and here is all that is included in the box. You get a tank, which has a 9mm capacity, a 0.17 pre-installed mesh coil, that is the single. You get a 0.12 dual. You get a bulb glass protector, silicone sleeve, a straight glass replacement, user manual, and obviously spare parts. And obviously here on the back, they have all of their warnings. You know, not for sale to minors. You know, don't use it if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, all that stuff. Sale only allowed in the United States, so all this is just their warnings. So when you first open up the box, you have your tank front and center and all your goodies. Pulling this little ribbon here. So here's all the stuff that is included in the packaging. Here is your replacement glass, your replacement dual mesh coil, your bubble glass protector, quality pass, user manual, and your little baggie of extra O-rings and seals. So here is the TFV16 tank. Starting from the top, you get your drip tip. This is actually not really a drip tip. This piece of resin right here is more like a sleeve. This comes off like so, and that's the actual drip tip itself. So you cannot really use your favorite drip tips on this. You probably could if you can find one, but it's going to look a little weird. This little button right here is to open your fill port, so you just simply push and swing, and it will swing wide open. Now, it is a little hard at first to get it open, but once you do, you got a nice big kidney-shaped fill hole there. And what I like about this tank is that there used to be the seal right here. Well, they changed that and put it at the bottom of the top. So that is actually a pretty nice little improvement to this tank, in my opinion. Down here you have your standard Cyclops style airflow, and it is on a stopper. It's a little tight at first, but once this thing gets used a little bit, it does loosen up to what I believe to be the perfect amount of restriction for the airflow ring. Here's the bottom of the tank, obviously TFV16, designed by SMOK. And to take the base off, just like all tanks, you just simply unscrew the base like so. So here is a better look at the single mesh coil head. And as you can tell here, you can have your threadings right there on the inside. That's because this coil is the entire chimney. But down here you can see your mesh. Again, this is a 0.17 right there, TFV16 mesh. You have your minimum line, and right here it says it's best at 120. Here is a 0.12 dual mesh coil head this thing comes with. As you can see, it's much chunkier than the single mesh. 0.12, this one actually has an 80 to 160 watt range, they say, but they say it's best at 120. There's a look at the inside of the coil head. There are your two strips of mesh. And here are the two coils side by side. As you can see, the dual is much fatter, much chunkier than the single. And as always, with all sub-ohm tanks, you want to prime them. Put a few drops here at the top, and obviously you put a bunch of drops in these little wick ports on the side here. Make sure that cotton is nice and saturated. Otherwise, when you go to vape this and there's any dry cotton in a coil head, you're gonna have a pretty bad time. And also to mention that this tank from the base is 28 millimeters in diameter. So here is the black rendition that I have been using during the testing, and as you can see, I have the dual mesh sitting in here at the 0.12, and I've been running it at about 100 to 110. That's where I think this thing runs the best at. But alright guys, that is the up close for the TFV16. Not a lot to do with this tank, pretty basic. So let's bring it back up top where I give you my cons, pros, price, and my final thoughts. See you at the top. Alright guys, we're back here up top with the TFV16. Now let's first address the cons. Now remember, these cons are my opinion. The first con for me would be the way the drip tip is, because it's not really a drip tip. This resin is more of a sleeve, and so you know, you can probably find a drip tip that can fit in this, but it's just going to look weird. This is kind of what they did with the Cleto as well. So if they would have just used a normal drip tip, or used a normal drip tip that they have been using, that probably would have been a lot better. The airflow is kind of subjective of a con, because even though there's plenty of airflow for both the single and the dual mesh, it's got this like really weird low pitch bellow to it. Let me show you. It's kind of got that bellowing, turbulent whistle to it, and that's it with just a little bit closed off. So let's open it up all the way. The bellowing does quiet down a little bit, but the airflow gets more turbulent at that point. Those are really the only two cons I have. Well, actually, scratch that, I have another one. The fact that the coil is also the chimney, though that may help in flavor and on paper, it kind of becomes a pain in the hind end, because with the coil also being the chimney, if you still have a fair amount of juice in the tank and you go to change your coil, you might lose quite a bit of juice. Now the pros that I have for this tank is the fact of its size. I love bigger tanks, I love bigger atomizers, and that's my speed. And the fact of this being a 28mm tank and holding 9 mils of liquid, that's a pretty fair amount of liquid, and most of the time you only get that capacity in most RTAs, kind of like the Steam Crave Glass V2, which I think that holds about 10, but you mostly see it in rebuildable tanks. You really don't see it in sub-ohms. So the fact that this tank having a 9 mil capacity bubble glass is also a pretty good touch. Although I do think they should have included 2 bubble glasses, not 1, and then include a straight glass. And this is another con, is the fact that most people love using bubble glasses. I know there's still people out there that still love the straight glass because they like the look of the tank with the straight glass, but in my opinion, I think including 2 bubble glasses would have been a much better option. One thing I do kind of like, I'm not crazy about it, but this is something I kind of really do like about the tank, is the fact that even though these are mesh coil heads, I can run these at 100 watts no problem. And me being a higher wattage vapor, that's actually pretty good. Now flavor. And this one is kind of hit and miss, and I'll explain why. The single mesh, it had this weird off flavor. Like, in perspective, it's more of a, like, you get the flavor of your liquid, and the flavor on that it's good. It's about average for a sub-ohm tank, but it kind of had this weird off aftertaste. And I knew it wasn't the juice, because the juice that I was running in this during the testing phase, most of the juices weren't old. You know, I would just buy them and start vaping them. So it had this weird taste. But that's with the single mesh. I don't get that with the dual. But like I said about the flavor is, you know, about average at best, maybe slightly above average for a sub-ohm tank. Now with it being a mesh, of course it's going to be a flavorful tank, but for this one, it's kind of hit and miss. Now the pricing for this tank is actually, I would say, decent. I purchased these from my local vape shop for about $34.99 per tank, and I don't think that's terrible for a sub-ohm tank, because I think most sub-ohm tanks run about that, you know, $35 to maybe even the $40 range. So a tank this size and running that kind of power through it, 35 bucks, give or take $1 here or there, depending on where you get them from. That's really not a bad price in my opinion. So how would I rate this tank? Well, considering that It's real simple to use. It's really simple to put back together. It's machined quite well. I would give, out of a 5-star rating, I would give the TFV16 a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now, that may sound, some people may say that sounds a little low of a rating for it, but with the way the drip tip is, the airflow is, I know a lot of people can get really nitpicky about that. 3.5 in my opinion is still a pretty good rating for this tank, and just because I put it at a 3.5 does not mean you would. You know, you may like it, you may not. This is my opinion. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. But guys, thank you so much for watching this review. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, I'm going to put a link to my Facebook group in the description, the Vapor Cave. Come join the fun. If you have any questions, there's somebody in the group that will kindly answer your question. In my opinion, the only stupid questions are the ones that aren't asked. And also, feel free to tune in Saturday nights for Dysfunctional Family, where I'll have T-Cat from T-Cat's Corner and Neutral Talk, The Salad, and many other people. So come join the fun there. And like I always say, as always, until next time, Monster Man Vapes, signing off.